Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode. When an invisible cloud spoke to the children of the visible. And in the description of the talk, you would see another name for this episode is Relationship Advice for Collective Beings. But really, I wanted to speak about something that I have indirectly in certain ancient texts gotten. There's something I experience in my inner realms, and it has to do with the relationship with space and matter. And so, right now, our species is really focused on its intelligence based on matter, and we are treating space as if it is invisible. And you know what's interesting? If visibility is based on matter, matter is in the visible in space. Let's consider that we are 8 billion explorers, and we have explored the visible. Even though there's so many galaxies, this universe, the visible universe, the observable universe is so vast and immense. But in regards to our position as a creature of visibility, as the children of the visible that we currently stand as, what happens to the children of the visible when they grow up? In other talks, I have suggested that we are going from an object-based position into a subject-based position, and then to a position where it is neither object or subject, therefore it can only be a return to pre-thought. That means it's as if before you were an individual, you were kind of like a pancake. You were flipping between everything and nothing. But now that you're an individual, it's as if you have a relationship with everything as an individual, and you have a relationship with nothing. So you can say everything and nothing was here first in the room, then man entered, The individual is a guest of the house of everything and nothing. So if an individual, a conscious individual object, is whatever speed you give it, whether you fast forward a long period of evolution or if you consider a short period, the conscious individual object is evolving into an unconscious collective subject. So human beings have first communicated with themselves to exist. Then we have communicated with the other to experience. And so we are creatures that have mastered, in a strange way, objective mobility, and and objective utility, We can use objects, we can move objects. Now we have also subjective utility. We're using ourselves as subjects throughout the day. What that means is we are a subject to ourselves. Everybody is their own subject, whether they give orders or not. So from subjective mobility and subjective utility, I feel we have also mastered this to some degree. Maybe not as much as physical mobility. Maybe we might not have certainty to move as a subject, you know. When I was younger, I remember there was these PowerPoint presentations I had to do in high school, and it was like I would just get, in a strange way, kind of pushed into my own judgment, you know. So we can move subjects, we can use subjects. Now, let's say beyond the object subject and the subject object is a state where, let us say, simultaneously, because it's really hard to talk about something beyond objects and subjects. So before it goes beyond the language threshold, beyond the point where experience cannot be put into words, there's a relationship of object came first, then the subject, or subject came first, then the object. After this simulation is also, you have also found a sort of acquaintance and mastery with both, let's say it's like wings. So you're an object, you have an objective outer realms and you have a subjective inner realms. And the objective outer realms, if the world came first, you don't exist. If the self came first, the world doesn't exist, really. In a causal and effectual way of seeing it. So I feel we are right there. We have pretty much, let's say, graduated from, again, I'll repeat it just for the sake of this, like objective mobility and objective utility, and we are graduating. I would say we have. I declared it that after 2020, the era of advanced communication has begun. And so subjective mobility and utility, now it's unknown relationships with both. That means the mastery, how we were being an object and how we are moving as an object, it was in a known state. You know, that's why there was control in it. And we can say, I can honestly say, not everybody is understands their own subjective utility. I feel most people on this planet are waiting for saviors, not realizing that they're just sitting on a simple chair. That any moment, just like how the wind can blow, how the dry leaf is positioned on the ground, you know, similarly, the rhythms, the winds of evolution, the winds of life, reshape you to yourself. Now, what is interesting is that if we want control with an object, there's a iced coffee here in front of me, so I move this and I move it to another part of the table. There we go, I'm an objective master. It's like, I didn't know I had that much mastery, you know. Now, when it comes to moving a subject, you don't have hands, if you notice. So what do you move a subject with? You move it with attention. So from subjective mastery and utility, whatever that would mean to the listener, it is going to attention, being attention. We are first being what's in the attention, then we are learning that we are attention. Now, when you are attention, I feel you come to the empty page. What that means is there was a term in Vedic thought, you can say it's called sanskara. It means impressions. And what that means is, think of like all the impressions you have gotten from the beginning of your conscious life when you were born as a biological being, and to the point of you're gonna like this whole lifetime is you're getting impressions from the beginning to the end, and these impressions are like battling it out for your smile. So first we learn from what is known in the attention, then we learn from the unknown as the attention. Beyond the language threshold is really the most exciting thing. That means they could put so many different books in front of you, and they could put a book you have never read, let's say, you know, and people will pick up the book they haven't read, whatever it is, and we don't seem to notice that we are seeking the unknown. That is life. It's as if when you ask yourself, why am I here? It's probably to use what this is, this biological existence. And when we use it, it is just accessing more sight. That means when I look at matter, I'm like, matter, what are you doing? And it seems that there's an immaterial driver. And when I look at the immaterial, I'm like, what are you doing? It seems like there's a material vehicle at work. So in some sense, we are moving beyond objects and subjects. We are, of course, I'm one person in a universe of a billion trillion stars saying, I'm just pretty much giving a report on this battlefield of life. But I honestly feel, and I feel we can see that in the momentum of change, that when human beings realize objects are not eternal, and when we also realize subjects are not eternal, it is a feeling as if you lived inside a game. What that means is, imagine your friends were like, let's go play indoor soccer, and so you went to play indoor soccer, and you went and you saw there were different rooms. It was in this giant place, and there were different indoor um, fields, and so imagine you went on the first field you saw and you started playing, and midway you realize none of these are your friends. You're in the wrong field. It's as if you went to the right place, but you were not in the right room, you know? And I feel that's what happens, especially to, you can say, the psychology of the power hungry. That they feel they are in the right place, they are in the position of power, yeah, look at, I'm a king, look at my crown, but then at the same time there is that feeling of it's not the right room, and I have felt this, and it took me a while to catch on to it. There was a point in my life when I was younger, I didn't respect myself, I respected the world. I didn't respect myself. That means I wouldn't listen to my own novelty. I would dismiss my novelty. I felt the world knew what I could never, and it was done. Pretty much when you rely on an ecosystem, the ecosystem becomes your mind. There was this saying that I think it was, I don't know, Brian Tracy, Napoleon, and one of these business enlightened businessmen, and they said, "Show me your six friends, six closest friends, the six people you're around, and I will show you your future." And our environment influences us, and we influence the environment. And people, based on, just think of the young child psychology, just like that Oliver Twist psychology, where you're looking at the chef and you're like, can I have some more? Those people who want more will never see. If you want more from the past, you will never see what the new has to offer. you karmically miss out. That means choice is so crucial, and how you choose in this life is really crucial, because you can choose things. It's like somebody choosing to sitting on a chair and never getting up. You know, when I see we have the term extremism, I would say there's extremism on an inner level with ideology. What that means is, if we consider there's an inner realm and an outer realm to every person, right? It is as if their mind is living before their body animates. It's like, first you wonder, what's my body doing here? And you realize, oh, there's a mind. And then you live some time and you're like, yeah, I got a mind. That's nice. And then after some point you're like, wait a minute, why is the mind here? And then you see how much of it is non-conceptual, and all the methods. I don't know if people know this, but science is a method, the scientific method. Even for me, religion, people can choose to. For me, like I could tell you, I was born in Iran, and there was religion mixed, infused with the law of the nation. And let me tell you, religion is like, in some sense, there nobody, every person is looking and animating life. That means no two religious people have ever been seen the same religion, because they have different eyes. That means if we all could see the same thing, we would be one thing. And you can say anytime in universal activity there is similarity, there is authorization for collective being. So what does that mean? That means, imagine we have this view of extraterrestrials as being individual form shaped. When are they going to come down? We have this view, but what if in life there was enough of an intelligence that when we looked at life had led to individual creaturehood? In some sense, why not collective creaturehood? You know, you see in nature there is various sizes of life forms, right? And what if we, in some sense, find we are evolving from life forms into life fields, right? And when we evolve into life fields, technically there is no subject for the object, because the mind feels it can be any subject, and the body realizes because it's temporary, it is never here. So that oscillation, and you can say the mystical mindset, where the person feels they are wavering between everything and nothing, as I was mentioning earlier, that wavering is happening because of an honesty of the unknown with itself. When the unknown, you see, most people, I don't know how much people are just comfortable being a fool. When it comes to mysticism, when it comes from learning from your mind, when you can say your mind becomes your ally and starts teaching you, and you tap into rhythms, it's not the suggestion of any sort of invisible other, even though I've said an invisible cloud. It's like imagine an invisible cloud lifting up creatures from the dirt of a world, you know. Now I feel what has gone on is that there was the most immediate ignition, you know, something was set into motion. It's like evolution, human evolution, and its uniqueness is like something bypassed Earth's program, which for me is the future. I find we are a lesson for the future. We think the future is going to be our lesson. It's going to be our teaching the future. But I'm telling you, our past is the teaching for the future. It's like I wouldn't be surprised if there are yogis in samadhi who have been in samadhi for years, and they suddenly open their eyes and they're like, "Oh, I stepped out of the classroom. Time to go back." They close their eyes and they go back. To learn from your attention is like trying to befriend a wild animal. to learn from your own mind. That means it's like when you look at animal psychology, it's kind of like infant psychology. It's just instant respond in accordance to instincts. There is no overlaying hindsight. There is no multidimensional witnessing. Anytime you feel what you're looking at is the truth, it is in some sense an ignorance to eyes being unconditional. So you give your power literally to the language that defines you, and you accept till the end of time. The box is on your head, you know, the end of the lifetime. You know, it's like I'm telling you, people are complaining so much about masks, wearing masks. But what if you have been wearing an ideological mask and it has been hard for poetically the freedom of the journey of a unique lifetime to be presented? For me, there was something chaotic. It made me kind of tear up a little. And what it was that I noticed that there was this oral, there was no choice literally back in the day. They had to orally share stories, kind of like keep the stories from entering the void orally before they could even write it down, you know? And so it was a situation where oral discussion, pretty much somebody relaying a story in a sort of unique way, became like, you can say, the transmission of the teaching and whatnot. So what was the issue was, I would say, cultural, it's as if truth has never went anywhere. We are confusing ourselves by not looking at what is here. I feel that similar to how the scholar Terence McKenna said, there's another tenant in the room, and I would say religions have been worshipping that other tenant in a unique way, in a unique way up the mountain. It's kind of like hilarious. There's been so many wars in the name of religion, but God is inconceivable. So they're fighting over the inconceivable. They're fighting in how you point to the inconceivable. Literally, wars have started because people have pointed. For me, something personal that I want to share about this invisible cloud that spoke to the children of the visible, it is an era of symbiosis, and it is an idea, I would say, that if Albert Camus was here, he would look at it and he would say, yes, this is the absurd. You see, we are conditioned. I find the human being, from when it is born, it is conditioned into self-implementation. Therefore, the illusion of choice lingers. But if a person doesn't self-implement, kind of Taoistically through action, as if in the Tao Te Ching it says action through inaction, the self, no, it's like, here's the thing. If it is true, any person, think of think of this moment of existence as a vehicle. Now think of it that you are the driver. It's your car. Okay, let's treat it this way. Let's treat it that even though the car it's more like rent a car, but let's treat the biological body like it's yours. It's just yours. You know, it doesn't belong to anyone. So let's say this body is yours, but it's a vehicle. And what does that mean? It is a vehicle where your memories, which are versions of you, kind of made snapshots from the film of life, conscious snapshots, etched into the long-term memory from this film of life. Imagine that now you are a vehicle, and you are this version of you now in the present listening to me is in the driver's seat, and there is various senses, like the sanskara I was saying earlier. There are endless impressions. Imagine like karma is like oceans of impressions, oceans of different experiences, but then our conscious life is the wave. You see, that means anytime you come out of the pitch of the wave, you can some say frequency. And when you come out of that position, you are not the wave. So it's as if there's some human beings that the more they desire and want things, they have to be individuals, so they feel it's an individual only. They feel they're the only driver. But I will share personally, aside from the context, I want to literally share this idea and kind of strip it away from the imagery that this world has found before. That in some sense, the elemental realm is a vehicle for attention. But when attention gets to know itself, you actually realize a very profound truth in the mystical path. The body may be alone, the attention can never be. Your mind, think of it, the body travels alone, the mind is not alone. And when the mind gets alone, it doesn't let itself get alone. It will shout. You know? You can say like a person drowning or not drowning, where some person needing help shouting. You can say the mind, when it really realizes it has no other choice but to eventually, inevitably, it will return to the voice, to the void. I thought of something very poetic. It's as if the body is saying a sentence. The body poetically is saying, I don't want to die. The mind is poetically saying, where am I? You know? And the soul, this world, this word that has traveled far to enter our ears now. It is an archetype too easily dismissed. The soul is looking at the body and the mind, and it's like, don't fear. Fear is what keeps you in a simulation. Without fear, you cannot simulate. And when I say fear, the other side of the coin of fear is desire. Usually fear and desire come out of hand. Because if you didn't fear, things would appear at their own pace. That means the desire wouldn't project. Because there is fear of time, or I'm not going to get it, or I got to run towards it, or I got to do this, when it's made into a mission, your desire, it's as if the desire hides the fear, so the person may work really hard and get something in this life, but they would feel that it was as if a bypassed hands are getting it. You see, I find that sometimes for me, it's not about, ever since I heard the idea of karma, it wasn't about first to escape karma, escape the cause and effect, you know, how we set into motion consequences of livelihood. It was kind of like first me in this world being like, okay, so people have karma. Let's say there's someone drunk driving, and three people go sit in that car, and they don't stop the drunk driver. Do you know? So if there is a crash, those three people got sucked into the karma of another. You see, so I thought that karma is an infusion. It's very hard to try to comprehend it as an individual cause and effect, where the whole thing could be a collectively cause. We could be like, oh, this led to that, that led to this, oh my God. And then at the same time, it is all one causal position. As if we are here trying to be like, yo, what is the history of this world? But it is as if the realm was spoken. And when I say spoken, not from a divine agency, not from a face that we think we can, a personality we think we can give, you know? One must treat the void as their friend. That means usually when there is fear, it doesn't mean that the person has to like act like they don't have fear. They have to notice where the fear comes from. And so our species has a fear of surpassing individualism. We don't even know what that would look like because it is not shape. It is not in shape. So I feel if this universe feels like it was set into motion, it was commanded into movement. An explosion is literally like a command. It's like a shout. Somebody shouting is like an explosion. You know, you can say it wasn't a big bang. It was a big roar. It was a universal roar. The universe suddenly roared, or it was like ah, and the cosmos through inflation, cosmic inflation after cosmic inflation, the whole reality came about. And we could be like an echo moving, you know. That means our consciousness could be the echo of a higher dimension. Like if our consciousness is being echoed two-dimensionally, we're hearing two-dimensional echoes of, I don't know, I'm just using this example, like three-dimensional uh, voice. That means our causal intelligence is like an onion encapsulating the temporary effect, I would say. I personally feel in my life I have um, not only been in a symbiosis, but I have noticed this collective being speak through thought in a way where you see man owns his body, but very few people have the discipline to actually hold themselves as a thought. That means when you look at really psychology, it's like a web browser that refreshes. You know, we sleep, we wake up, oh my god, new day. You know, so it's like there's a refresh factor, but to the imagination, to the inner realms. Think of your inner realms just changing quicker than your outer realms. So technically, the outer realms feel they can't own it, or they feel they can't hold on to the inner realms. You know, the speed of these two dimensions is also what I feel inspired Rene Descartes to find the mind-body dualism, to establish that relationship. As creatures of nature, the best thing, our best strategy is to trust nature first of all. That means there's many things man may not understand, but it seems like the world already knows, and you just follow the song of the moment, you know. And it's like this beautiful relationship where the heart doesn't have eyes, yet it is beating so that the eyes can see, and once the eyes can see, they can share back to the heart. Your eyes enlighten your heart enlightens your eyes. We are honestly sculpting meaning. We are extracting sculpting. It's as if God's future was man, even though the concept of God is inconceivable, but it's as if like you know, it's kind of like considering the human being has a body, has a visible body and an invisible mind, and it's like wondering if there's a visible planetary body and there is an invisible planetary mind. That means there is perhaps an ocean of intelligence accessible from this plane of existence, you know. I don't think the fountain of youth was that, but I would say the fountain of youth was a timeless outcome. So you could kind of say non-duality was the fountain of youth. You know, it's also like sometimes I feel like I'm a chess piece, and I'm like, why is this chess move here? Like this chess piece here. Why is this chess piece moving? You know. And now imagine you were playing chess, and your chess, you told the chess piece, hey, chess piece, move 2 pieces forward, 2 squares forward. And the chess piece was like, I don't believe in you, be quiet, chess master. You know? It's like, I do what I want. And what's fascinating is the chess master is just using the chess pieces. The chess master, in moving the chess piece, is the chess piece. In not moving it is not it. Do you see? And there's also this next level view that just like how much of, just look at your biological body. You have to think about your outer realms. You don't have to think about your heart beating. You don't have to communicate to your, I mean, like your cell, your body is automated. Nature is moving automatically, and recently it has become manual. And so this manual existence we have. So we are literally, the biology is like a manual car. Also an auto, like parts of it automated. Actually, most of it automated. When I see like when a person can sleep, the body can exist without the consciousness in the body, that technically means body doesn't need a mind to be here. Which in some sense means matter is its own dimension. Matter is like just innocent. It's like color. Existence is like color. It's like there's no true red truth, green truth, blue truth. They're all true. Yet they all are points of being that can no longer be defined. It's like we can't even call a tree a tree. That means the subject, object, the space between the object and subject is where freedom is. That means the space between beliefs. So imagine you were jumping from one cliff to another cliff, you know, And that, and let's say you could totally do the jump, and so mid-air, that's like the, I would say, the future. Our future is to not become beings in space. We're going to become space beings. We are in an unknown world. Therefore, we are as unknown as the world. For the first time, let us not implement the judgment algorithm first, you know, as a species. Human history is like a book, like just all human beings who have lived. It's like empty pages, opportunities in space and time, and creatures arising. So technically, we are, if let's say if there was a way to 100% document, survey, and record everything accurately, we would be the sentences in our history books. So history is us. We are our history. And you know, it's like so many are trying to get rid of the ego, not realizing what is naturally there is not wrong. It's like the person first wonders what their past self deserves, then looks at this present moment and wonders what this present moment deserves, and then the person wonders what their future self deserves. And because there is emotions, it can't just be a physical thing. It can't just be like the person does one thing. It's like it can't be like let's say we have uh, visible other communication, other dash communication, or let's say visible world dash communication, and we have visible self dash communication, and then let's say we have a sort of invisible self dash communication, and an invisible world dash communication. That means just like how a person has to interact with a world, You know, you interact with the world, and as you can say, just attention is the source of communication. So that interaction with the world is like you learn from the world. You go into new territory in the visible realm, and you learn something. And let's say you are a martial artist, and you also learn physically from yourself. Like you can pay attention to what your body communicates to you, and you can pay attention to what the world communicates to you. Do you know? People sometimes can see the idea of pain, or they can see that the body is trying to say something. You know? Now, after, let's say we mastered that, let's say we had the healthiest selves and we had the most advanced and efficient world, we got that down. Let's right now envision just like we built heaven on earth. We designed it and it was incredible. And our grandchildren were just open to their greater genius through that. It's like after we have solved the problems of the visible realm, this is how advanced intelligence is. It goes on to the inner realms. And in your inner realms, you can say it's always there. The mind is like, we think we have memories, but your memories have you. It's like a person who's swimming inside an ocean, and it's like, oh man, this ocean is here because I'm in it. It's just the grand mystery, especially for the future generations. If there was an invisible world, how would we communicate to it? It would have to be engagement. So I would say, imagine there was an advanced school for communication, and in this school, children were being trained to, in some sense, geometrically navigate into the unconscious, into the collective unconscious. It would be another way of saying it's nothing like too too specific, but it's just like the antenna range increasing. In all these years that when I come to give these talks, I just come and sit and I slow down my life as if there is something more than my opinion on it. And then when you look at things as if you have never looked at it in the way that you are. Man may die without what he is born within. It's like Brahman. Let me tell you, it's kind of poetic. It's as if behind your eyes, it is the world, it is the house of Brahman. And it's like in front of your eyes, it is the house of Shiva. And it's as if the witness is standing in the house of Vishnu. And for me, I'll be honest, it's like, it was a very odd thing how much I found myself drawn to the idea of Vishnu. To a point where I was like, 20,000 years ago, could I have been? And I got that far, and then I just laughed myself back into the presence of my attention prior to the mind's attempt. You see, when you do something repetitively for a long time, you begin to see dimensions of it. So literally, skill is concentration. Concentration is zooming in. And when you zoom in, you realize you can also zoom out, you know? And in a world where the landscape, you're just a creature designed to respond to the environment. That means if somebody jumps out with the ghost costume, yeah, and says boo, you're like, ah, probably not that much scared, but let's say you shout ah because the guy like jumped on your toes. The ghost jumped on your toes, and that's why the person was shouting at the ghost, screaming at the ghost. But What I'm trying to say is like we have to realize there is more than us here, and then we got to do something about it. But the mystery, the mystical mystery, is you cannot be a doer. So it's as if we have to wait until like the world makes its chess move. That means you just reach your pretty much imagine this is it. Like the best example. Imagine birds flying into the sky. Okay, from the branches they're on, just all birds in the world. This is like a story from, you can say, Persian. Um, uh, uh, you can say this is it's from the work this work from Attar, this Sufi mystic poet, and Attar. Um, his book was called The Conference of the Birds. So there's the story that all the birds enter and they go into the world, into the sky, and they decide to find the greatest bird ever, which is the phoenix. And all these birds keep flying. They're all flying and they're like, yeah, let's find the phoenix, collective effort, collective effort, collective effort, you know? Then the birds start getting tired. And this is really how human beings, your true character, shows in how much you can endure. One by one, the birds get tired. Sometimes they get tired in groups, you know? And the birds stop flying, and at this journey, this long journey to find the ultimate bird, the phoenix, only 30 birds are left. Excuse me. These 30 birds realize they are the phoenix. And that's the, you can say, beauty of Attar's poetry. And I feel when it comes to building an advanced civilization, I have many friends in this world. But really, those who I consider my true friends are those who I consider have seen the world before me. You see, we are the only thing that can respond to the calling of the updating of civilization. For how long are we going to just be looking at platonic solids? Like, when is there going to be a geometrical revolution of architecture? you know, it's as if I wouldn't mind a policy that would deny, that makes it illegal to make architecture that is based on the plutonic solids. That means it's like our houses should look like artwork, modern art. And so what is happening is weird. It's literally like you can put a bunch of metaphors here. Either a caterpillar waking up from a cocoon, either a snake shedding its skin, or a human being that has been living in you can say, a container of language, awakening to a freedom that was here before you were born. That is really it. Because I will tell you a secret. People speak because in their inner realms there's an action, there is an event. Language is the Iron Man suit, it is not Iron Man. And if we think the Iron Man suit is Iron Man, we make the mistake of never seeing Tony Stark. And that's the mistake being made with us feeling that our material body is the only thing. Let me tell you something so astonishing. Think about that you're a neurologist. and you're a neurologist, and you have managed to see, you're like literally seeing in real time, excuse me, you're seeing in real time the brain wirings. Let's say you've connected to like a poet, to like one of those, what's the term? Spoken word poets, spoken word. Those people who go and say poetry on stage. Imagine you connect something, and the poet, a spoken word poet, goes into some intense emotional thing, right? And the neurologist is like, yeah, okay, I'm seeing the brain wiring, right? I'm seeing the brain, in some sense. How would I say it? Like the thunderstorm in the brain, you know. Now, ask yourself, whoever's listening, the neurologist is looking at movement and has to correlate it to a movement on another dimension. One of the most complex things, I would say. Not just mobility, but when it comes to the inner echo, the inner subjective echo of the animal that we have retained for so long. There was a moment where I would say I, in a very playful way, raged at the logos. And I was like, if people are free from the beginning, why should anything be done? And if people can instantly awaken from the slumber of the linguistic simulation, that freedom deserves so much more than how we are all living now. And I will tell you, it's just multidimensional responsibility. We're having an ability to not only engage the multidimensional, but to care for it, to care for the mysteries of the mind. You know, imagine there was a person who went to this temple, and he's like, I've had it with this world. It's too crazy, And the person goes, he's like, okay, I'm going to go to a temple. He goes to a temple, and he's like, all right, I want to be an enlightened monk. How do I do this? And the monks are like, okay, you got to renounce all these material desires and pretty much take, like, what is it, 32 vows. There was a time, guys, I was considering to become a professional monk. If such a term can exist. And so imagine this person, the monk's like, okay, man, but seriously, why are you here? What have you seen in the world? And imagine the person's like, listen, man, I don't like the color green, you know? And in some sense, it's like, okay, imagine this story is from centuries ago. It'd be easier to tell that way. Imagine it's like, the person's like, I don't like the color green, and this whole world runs on money. you know. Or the person could be like, I don't like paper. It's like, I don't hate money, I just don't like paper. The monk is like, sorry to break it to you, man, but the leaves in the garden are green. I feel there is, as for a backup emergency, like a fire extinguisher or something, we can just have this algorithm that uh, everybody is an unknown mind moving in a known body. Therefore, we are not even at the point to fight over truth, or, you know, it's like we can't even tell to be sure to even begin the war, you know, the linguistic war. I feel ultimately it could mean that language is, this whole humanhood is a phase. It's a phase of an intelligence that is consciously remembering everything. Okay, enough poetry. Let me just see how I can. Let me use a pencil this time if I speak. Okay, imagine it in phases. Right now, we are animals that speak, are making mouth noises, are making sounds, and so we have this. Our knowledge is really a pinpointing system, kind of like how we made the alphabet out of nowhere. We're overlaying meaning, kind of like what I was trying to tell you with the neurologist example. Was really the neurologist is looking at movement and has to correlate. So the free will, in some sense, is connecting the dots. That's free will. And we feel that's our choice, but we did not draw the dots, in some sense. That's what you realize about nature. If you were a robot, yeah, go read a book, go find some treasured map of truth. But when you realize you're a natural being, it's as if you cannot lie to nature. You can lie to yourself as much as you want. You can even lie to others, but you cannot lie to nature because it was here. It saw everything you did before you did it. You know, there was something, I think now it's kind of like a lost culture, but there were, I would say, cultures for the idea of druidry. You see, before there was language, it was man and nature. And I want you to imagine like an animal being unconscious, suddenly being conscious. It's an animal. That means it had fun. That means consciousness was fun. That's why it was, I feel there was a moment, and like mindless momentum to just go forth. It was new, you know? It's hilarious. The past doesn't care about the present. The present doesn't care about the future. And the future probably doesn't care about the past. We have scattered our psychology into fragments that don't care for one another. We are not designed to fit in a world. We are designed to create new worlds that are backup options for future generations to fit into it if they like. You know? It's as if they asked this wise man, what sentence of wisdom do you have for the future generations? Just look in the mirror. No, I got it. The wise man was like, what do I have to say? He's like, the children are the future teachers. Everything is learning from how it's changing. And this really doesn't have an ideological owner. And it's miraculous how just the consciousness is here, it becomes so strange. The world becomes a strange place when you feel the subjective witness, what is conscious of like visualization, memory, how we have words and whatnot. What the linguistic simulation seems to not be directed by. It's like Earth is like, imagine a film set. The film set is Earth. The actors are Earth, but the director is not Earth. Do you know? And that's the challenge, really. I kind of feel like everybody is left with the dilemma of, in a dualistic world, how can you talk about one side? That means, imagine you're telling someone this is what good means and they have no context of bad. And then they're like, okay, so this is good. And then you think of it, the person's like, how do I know though it's good? And then you're like, oh my God, I need a bad to have a comparison, you know? So that's what I'm saying. When right and wrong are like, duality is Shiva's domain, really. So the dual is destined to be broken and reborn and broken and reborn and broken and reborn. It's literally like karma is like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong. You've come into like the factory room of an old school, let's say, I don't know, like the kind of factory they had in Charlie Chaplin. The one where Charlie Chaplin got stuck. And I feel if we find a way to work with the world multidimensionally, instead of judgment, there is just expansion of the spectrum of possibilities. And people waiting for their intuition to make the first step is like the actor waiting for the director to say action. Yeah. When I'll give a simple example. When a person eats food with a spoon, you have to trust the spoon in your hand. And so you don't see a person like for years make plans on how they're gonna hold like a spoon in their hand. It's instant. So once there is an experiential familiarity and an attempt at actualizing something, that experience serves you. That means instead of success and failure, it's like, okay, this kind of moment arose. This kind of moment arose. And so it's, in some sense, life is teaching you. Think of it this way, that you wanted to understand why people are moving. So you had to understand why your planet was moving. In order to understand why the planet was moving, you had to understand why the universe was moving. You had to look beyond the atmosphere. And let's say, in order to understand the universe moving, you have to look at, eventually reverse engineer back to a point where we're wondering, what is understanding? They told us to know ourselves, but what is knowing? And I would say to the mystic, knowing is the unknown. Knowledge, the true knowledge, is not knowledge that in some sense can be said. Poetry is just an attempt at trying to reach the bookshelf where what is on that shelf is no longer a book. There was a lot in a lot of religions, there's this idea of purity of mind, purity of body. And if we had another view of this purity, as if somebody, I don't know, rolled in sand and then they like were, you know, rinsing it off, you know, they were under a shower. So it would be literally like there was a previous state where the moment was in a certain context, and it's literally like you wash the previous context you had to the concept. And for the new age, this is really what modern healing is. Like what it's like you are releasing the concept from a code, from a past code. And think of your memories as codes you have access to. Now, I am a person who, in my own school of, like in my school of thought, just to not step on the toes of other philosophies, in my school of thought, it's literally, I don't see shape as the ultimate. So the reason I have a comfort with geometry and design, because what is aware of this geometry most instantly knows it is not geometry. So the more experience has instantaneous meaning, that meaning cannot be dual, and so it's literally like you may see a film in an instant in your inner realms. Think of it this way. Albert Einstein says that the faster, if we were to speed up towards the speed of light, time would stop. If we could go faster than the speed of light, there would be no time in some sense. Okay? So think of it this way, that someone meditating or concentrating or in a process of wondering, of sincere self-inquiry or self-awareness, it's like the more we concentrate on a singular point, think of it that our inner realm starts speeding up to the speed of light. Now imagine it speeds up to the speed of light, so they reach a point where your inner realms are moving so fast you cannot even see a content to the inner realm. So imagine you were visualizing, you could visualize let's say a cube just hovering in the air in front of you, or any object. Just look at some object in front of you and visualize it hovering in the air. Now that's it. That visualization is in your inner realm. Now I want you to start spinning and rotating that object in the air in your visualization, and speed it up, try to reach the speed of light. You will see at some point your inner realms becomes inconceivable in the inner realms, so you're left as that empty seer. So the empty seer is beyond the speed of light and time. So this is the timeless. So in a timeless reality, there is no alphabet, there is no spectrum, there is no separate colors, but there is being. So it's as if you were learning from the surface of the world, now you are learning from its depths. And once you have learned from its depths, you are going holistic. What that means is you in some sense see an inseparability between the individual's activity, and an inseparability in the cosmic activity. Pretty much your life becomes the grand, or you can call it great, the grand happening. You just realize you have already won the ticket, the lottery ticket, and you are in the in like the celebration of a lifetime, as if eternity had no purpose, and then the illusion was like, I got your back, eternity, you know, and then eternity was like, okay, now something new. You see, the non-dual still experiences the unknown witness. That means something that they would say in Vedic thought, in like I believe it was in the Mahabharata, where gods would come down, gods from higher dimensions would come down and speak to sages, to these mystics and yogis who were just alone in nature, you know, to the silent, to those who've realized the silence, I would say, the one and only silence. And so the gods would come and speak. Why would a god need to come down and speak to a sage, to a human sage? Because even you can be a god and still be ignorant. This is why nature's law, which is that grand happening, surpasses it. Pretty much living in a world is like acting in a film you didn't write. And people are like, freedom, yeah, they separate themselves in a bubble and feel that's the proper anarchist freedom. And you know, the biggest clue of why there's way more unknown left is simply because every day happens once. So every day has like an infinite opportunity cost. It's as if, like, imagine every day you wake up, the mind has gone into a buffet, and instead of a buffet, the mind is seeing classifications of the realm. And the mind has various ways. I feel nobody is, in some sense, you can say, stupid, because you're not a body. You are a probability engine. So you can say there's no such thing as stupidity, there's just potential. Some have more potential, some have less potential. And this potential is based on how important the mystery of their own eyes is to them while they're alive. The world is an opportunity from dualistic ignorance to access infinity, and then come back to the teaching of the void and the singular. That means there are some people right now think of life being a spiral, and they are finding their certainty in accordance to past spirals. There's some people who, in some sense, want to be at the edge of the spiral. They're like, all right, I saw the past. You know, what next? And so their attention in life, the unknown becomes important to them. You know, for most people, known phenomenology is important. I don't know how many people throughout the day, like, you know, they're going about the day and they're like, oh yeah, how about this unobservable universe? You know, what should we do about the unobservable? You know, nobody thinks. We're so occupied with just the observable game. It's as if like we are literally like we are treating matter as if it's like a chocolate factory, and everybody's like endlessly trying to eat chocolate, you know? And it's like there's nothing wrong with chocolate, but honestly, like if the whole species was eating chocolate, we'd be like, oh my god, is chocolate invading our species? Can you imagine sugar? Like we realized sugar was an alien this whole time? All sugar.
Like all sugar gathers around them, they become like this monster the human species has to fight with. It's like the battle against sugar isn't over, but it will be after I drink this Coke. You know, we'll get moving after I. I feel it is not too much of a far-fetched idea if a human being wants to know if there's an invisible cloud communicating. You know, because it's invisible. If if the invisible dimension and the visible dimension are two different dimensions, you know, this is how Descartes saw it. So if the visible and invisible are different, then in some sense, after we have moved in the visible, the question comes, how am I invisible? So first you're like, at first you say, how do what's the term? I need. It's like first you have the view. You need to know more. You're doubting your knowledge. Then you reach a point where you doubt how you don't know. So you're wondering if you really know or if you really don't know, right? Right now, people who get sucked into the vacuum cleaner of the educational system, which 100% needs reform, it's mind-boggling. You know, and it's just so easy. It's so easy to give it a reform. You just have to implement a multidimensional curriculum. So first you learn from the visible world, then the visible self, then the invisible world, and the invisible self. Honestly, it's so hard to watch um, a loop on a massive scale. Like existence is just, it's literally acting like gears. It's acting like, you know how there's seasons? There's like 4 seasons. Imagine there's like 4 universal seasons. The universe change goes into 4 different states. Now let's think of it that, let's say there was an invisible cloud here. Let's say there was an invisible cloud and the invisible cloud was like, no way, people are talking about me. This is next level, you know? And this invisible cloud doesn't have personality, but just for the sake of this point, I'm showing you. This invisible cloud is like, people are noticing me. Oh my god, you know. And so the invisible cloud's like, oh my god, people are saying something. I gotta say back, say something back. And so what the invisible cloud does is that it tries to find you in moments where you trust life the most. And when you trust life the most, it's like you're trusting to your. It's as if your future self came back, and it's like, hey, don't freak out, and you were just in shock listening to your future self, you know. And the future self was like, cut the sugar, man, come on.
To continue, the invisible cloud would communicate through the person and would reveal to them. I feel most people who experience synchronicity are actually experiencing moments of where they are witnessing the world moving their self, where the world, the outer realms and the inner realms are synchronized. That explains Jungian synchronicity, to be honest. Imagine in the history books it was written in the year 2040, all human beings decided to open up a new dimension of history. For the first time, the species had two histories: a history of real events, of outer realm events, and a history of inner realm events. It's just so fascinating that everything you see, you can look again in some sense. When you look at the objective realm, sometimes I feel time is like a bird. It can fly past you, or it can land, you know, on your hand. The moment you realize that you don't know is the moment where the unknown can be unknown. And one glimpse at the real unknown is liberation from all linguistic structure. Suddenly all the listeners will realize why I'm so silly with language sometimes. Because the painter is not the brush. And imagine a painter just looks at the paintbrush, doesn't look at the canvas where the artwork needs to be drawn. And so it's as if the painting doesn't get painted, and the paintbrush, the artist has to, the eyes of the artist have to move somewhere else. Three words: remember your nature. And you will find yourself in the station. I would say the Sufis saw the other realms as stations, and they had a sort of ranking system to the evolution of the mind and the remembrance of the mind. It's as if the amnesia of the multidimensional is part of the phase, it's part of the game. There's nothing unnatural about it, you know? We're not the prisoners of the war of our own thoughts. You know, it's as if, like, who is life waiting for? I have waited for others to to change things in my life. I have waited even for myself, sometimes years. I will tell you, the higher you fly, sometimes the falls are heavy. It's like gifting your mind before it could move with the soul of the earth. You know? I feel we should have this view that anyone who finds themselves caught in their past, they should see the future and the present as on their side, like comrades. That means if you are suffering because of a past event, quickly wonder about the present, how the present appears to you, and how your own future appears to you. So I'll say it poetically. The guardian angels of the present moment are the past and future. The guardian angels of the past are the present and the future. The guardian angels of the future are the past and the present. So if we live properly in our present, and if we can treat our own history with a way where we are not dishonored into anarchy, but we are honored into at least an attempt to see what advanced collective efficiency looks like. Birds can fly together, why not human minds? It doesn't seem that hard. It seems hard because it hasn't been tried. But there was something. There was this quote. I just remembered this quote by Martin Luther King. Check out this quote. He says, it is from the last speech of Martin Luther King Jr., where he says, "I've been to the mountaintop." And guys, if you see the video for it, it will give you goosebumps. It's so profound. Okay, let me see. Where's the quote? Just a second. Let's see if I can find this quote. There we go. I found it's not the exact quote I wanted, but it's on those lines. Martin Luther King Jr. says, "If we are to have peace on earth," three dots follow, or if we are to have peace on earth, our loyalties must transcend our race, our tribe, our class, and our nation. And this means we must develop a world perspective. That means, can you imagine the day when you ask a person, "Where are you from?" and the person looks at you oddly and it's like, I'm from the same planet as you. And that is it. That is the story doesn't mutate from there on. A planetary species. We are now, right now, the species is fragmented into, and it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that we have to open up a realm where we are being tolerant in allowing the context of a system which has been so specific for so long to become multidimensional. That means we have to allow life to rebuild itself efficiently. That means it's as if it's like one command, as if like, what are you doing on this earth? Not just what are you doing as a person in a cultural, in a story told
too loud. It's like you begin wondering, okay, what as a being, what is this? And that's where, I would say for the first time, that butterfly that you have been chasing, that the divine butterfly is like, yo, what did this guy just say? The butterfly comes back. That means we are, the people are the world. We must care for people like how much we care for our world. And it's so easy to care, because if you realize you're in a void, then from how the act feels, you emanate archetype. You project archetype. Or fish, like reel in like a fishing rod, an archetype. Martin Luther King says, let's just go into a quote tunnel. Martin Luther King says, every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. Martin Luther King says, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Martin Luther King says, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. That means when you stop asking the right question or trying to look for the right question, the right terrace of sight to see reality from the right balcony. Okay, to continue. Excuse me. Martin Luther King says a great nation is a compassionate nation.
Martin Luther King Jr. says, "He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love." Martin Luther King says, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. That is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant." Martin Luther King says, "Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love." Martin Luther King says, "The art of acceptance is the art of making someone who has just done you a small favor wish that he might have done you a greater." Martin Luther King Jr. says, "Whatever your life's work is, do it well. A man should do his job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn could do it no better. A man should do his job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn could do it no better." Martin Luther King says, "You will change your mind, you will change your looks, you will change your smile, laugh, and ways. But no matter what you change, you will always be you." Martin Luther King says, "Never succumb to the temptation of bitterness. No person has the right to rain on your dreams." Martin Luther King Jr. says, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Martin Luther King Jr. says, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." It's so remarkable, we haven't noticed where minds are. Martin Luther King was so ahead of his time. There's the quote, the whole point of his tunnel, guys. I'll say, I'm like looking for that quote. There's a specific quote where Martin Luther King talks about the outcome of everything. What he says in a very unique way. He says, Martin Luther King Jr. says a man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for that which is true. Martin Luther King Jr. says everything that we see is a shadow cast by that which we do not see. Martin Luther King Jr. says cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. Martin Luther King Jr. says whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Martin Luther King says, at the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love. Martin Luther King Jr. says oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. The yearning for freedom eventually increases. Martin Luther King Jr. says the moral arc of the universe bends at the elbow of justice. Martin Luther King Jr. says a lie cannot live. Martin Luther King Jr. says the N needs the white man to free him from his fears. The white man needs the N to free him from his guilt. You see, there was this quote in Chinese philosophy, I think it was from Confucius or something, where he was saying everything in the world is connected with strings. Whatever we do as human beings, because we're getting to experience the individual dissonance first, all we have left is to the collective to experience it. And this is why I feel Martin Luther King says unconditional love will have the last word, because that is what a free mind is. Martin Luther King Jr. says human salvation lies in the hands of the creatively malevolently justly. I really wish I could find that quote. I should have said that in this quote. Martin Luther King Jr. says we must use time creatively. Martin Luther King Jr. says, "Have we not come to such an impasse in the modern world that we must love our enemies, or else the chain reaction of evil, hate begetting hate, wars producing more wars, must be broken, or else we shall be plunged into the dark abyss of annihilation." Yeah, it's pretty much like, what are we inputting into the system of civilization by how our ideology is influencing our behavior, right? So we have to not only have an ability to not discriminate on a body level or color level, it's mind-blowing that has happened, you know, but it should come to a point where it should be just a recognition of how I was saying earlier, we are unknown minds holding in known bodies. That means it's like, it's as if like a person is not just the words they say in one moment. They are like this sphere of everything they have ever seen, kind of spiraling in the spin, like coagulating in the sphere of how their consciousness is. When the species gets tired of war, entertainment will allow, in some sense, the genius to unravel. You know, really, it's like language was just something that we as evolved, evolving animals at some point, just we're like, okay, it's not enough just moving around and seeing it. We gotta talk about it. Oh my god, it's so loud, yeah. Oh, loudness of the music. You know, honestly, I hoped with the name Mr.Within to, in some sense, point out the self-reflective nature of every brain. Right now, we're in a world where brains have power, you know. We are right now just hovering like brains, hovering with a skeletal structure. Technically, the brain experiences itself hovering. So I sometimes it's like, imagine you couldn't see from your chin down. Not that you couldn't see from your chin down, but like your sight was, imagine you were just looking at, like, I don't know, one corner of a painting, and it was like all the other corners were in your peripheral vision, you know. Imagine some artist in some exhibition makes a painting that's on the corner of the wall, right? And the people who are watching it, who are trying to see the painting, they're like, yo, this artist, what is he doing to our eyes? You know, guys, honestly, when it comes to life, if we consider the unknown here first, we don't, we have no reason to take the known um, blindly seriously. I feel multidimensional maturity is our salvation. We can say, like, when you look at even a state of anger, for me, anger was a mystery until I realized what's going on when a person gets angry. Do you know? It's as if the unfulfillment of the past is resurfacing, oblivious to what it is resurfacing. So think of it this way: there was the idea of, for example, in Abrahamic religions, the idea of possession. Now think of it this way: uh, when a past event in the person's psyche is resurfacing and bypassing the present psyche. Do you know? So the angry person, in some sense, thinks he's right, thinks he knows exactly. He's no longer in the double checking mindset. You know, or mindfulness mindset. You know. You know, you could double check something, and then you can check the double. You could check out what duality is. An advanced civilization is like people shouldn't even take the idea too in heavy. Like they shouldn't make the idea too heavy for themselves to lift. You know, the advanced civilization is just wondering about how would we evolve next, and how advanced would we be. Because you see, our culture is occupying our evolutionary path due to, in some sense, you can say, the obsessive nature of the mind endlessly trying to be a self in every moment. You know, it's like at some point in life, you know, I feel it's kind of really metaphysical. The soul gets tired. It's like, mind, what are you doing? And the mind's like, soul, you're never here for me. You know, the mind is like, the mind's like, who said that? You know, the mind, it's like the soul's like, mind, what are you doing to yourself? And the mind's like, I know what I'm doing. And the mind is like, you know, mistreating the body, for example. Now imagine the mind ceasing to exist. It would be instantaneous soul body relationship only. There would be no intermediary, there would be no middleman, no middle mind. Or the mind would be a bridge where, after teleportation technologies, all people at all those bridge are um, uh, any engineer who had a vision of designing like a next level bridge was like, oh man, teleportation killed bridges. You know, teleportation will destroy the transportation industry. That means if instead of people making electric cars, I would say just make teleportation technology. Just invest in that. You know, or jetpacks, which is much healthier, where the individual could, like, I don't know, somehow jetpack to work, you know, jumping up on buildings and nothing's like, it's such a perfect jetpack system, right? It would totally be healthy too. Nobody needs to just go in a gym and work out. It literally, like, you can work out by how you used it, how you lifted yourself up with the jetpack, or how you chose to leap to work that day. Oh man. I feel there's a lot of people in the world who could be potentially just having their inner realms communicate in the outer realms, and when the inner realms is not from the conscious archetype in motion, you feel it's the divine, or you feel it's an interdimensional being. right? But in the truer nature, that interdimensional being, in some sense, has a question too. And imagine the interdimensional being had the same problems as you. You wouldn't glorify it that much. The whole interdimensional philosophical dimension, you won't glorify it when you realize it's pretty much a veil. That's the whole. I could say that the word esoteric, you could put an equal sign to just veil. That's it. And if you play with the veil, you haven't understood it. It's as if like, yo, that veil, that's like a room for the true. I would say the true unknown is a room for those who really have work to do there or not. You know, that means it's like culture culture from an artificial. I shouldn't say artificial, but from a non-natural origin, is now trying to replace the mind of a natural or biological being, right? So this is where natural choice must begin reliving. So every moment, I would say, try to do what is most natural to you. What your simplest self would be like, okay, you can do it. Imagine there's people who are like they have to cross like this small like pole or something, this beam from one canyon, one side of a cliff to another side of a cliff. And imagine one person, okay, there's two beams and two people are going at them at the same time. Two different people, person A and person B. Person A goes, let's say person A goes first, and person A just is afraid of heights and is looking at it, and they're both afraid of heights in some sense. Let's use that. So person A is going on the beam, just covering his own eyes, or not covering his eyes, but trying to not look down, being like, "Don't look down," trying to just make steps and go, which means the action, the activity was initiated without trust. That means the person didn't trust themselves when they took the first step. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. If you don't trust before you're pushed somewhere, there is that kind of like, you know, what's the term? Aftershock. Aftershock. I think there's an aftershock. So imagine now person B wanting to walk over this beam, similar to person A. Person A is freaking out, being like, "Don't look down!" Like just robotically trying to like take the steps and get there, kind of shaky system. Now person B is like, or imagine person B saw person A go first, okay, and person B had to go from the same beam. Now person B looks at this, and person A makes it somehow. Imagine like, I don't know, Yoda was there, like having their back, even if they didn't know. So now this time, let's say the other person wants to go from this beam. This person just looks at it, looks at the beam, looks at the moment, and instead of being like, "Oh my God," the person's like, "How I have never been into a moment like this." They just are honest with the unknownness of the moment, and they're like, "Okay," and so they may choose to walk rhythmically, do you know? In some sense, quickly and rhythmically. Kind of like the same way where, like, an archer lets go of a bow, you know? And person A is like, "Oh my God, person B made it so swiftly," And that swiftness was just the importance of the attention, and just really where you are piloting. I feel the brain is so advanced that it can't know how advanced it is. It's like the food of a chef. It's like you asking the food instead of the chef, like, "Why are you here?" And the waitress is like, "Sir, stop talking your food, please." I feel um, anybody interested in spirituality should treat as if in the future there's going to be a massive institution that's going to archive people's imagination, do you know, in accordance to how much they choose to share it in the outer realms, do you know? And because imagination is very unique, it's like the mind is becoming real, and reality through time is going towards the unreal. Literally, it's like pouring the sand, it's like breaking an hourglass and pouring the sand on a treadmill. Each sand falls in its own moment and part of the rhythm. So when you bring something from the inner realms to the outer realms, you are releasing it into a rhythmic, uh, believe it or not, cyclical kind of state. You know, kind of like how they say once the artwork shares his artwork with the world, everybody who sees it, it's no longer the artist's artwork. That means every person's, you can say, um, life so far is like a sort of a unique code of a program written. Every code is different, therefore, every reception of the moment is being filtered by every person's own experiences, you know? So I'm just saying that we should treat it as if in the future they're going to suddenly, right now it's like civilization seems to be just going purely towards just visibility is becoming king. Okay, so if visibility becomes the ultimate king, the unknown, the visible, that wouldn't realize in some sense that it is self-exiling. That means instead of exiling the unknown, the the self is separating itself from its greater knowing. You know, um, the attention is the source of life. That means anybody can figure this out in an instant. Like how every person is being a person, there's like you are an energetic existence, and then there's the experience of attention, right? So the mind, the best metaphor I would say is like the candle flame. So the wax is the biological body. The candle flame is like the candle flame is the brain, and the light that illuminates the room is the mind, right? So we're saying the mind is the effect of the brain, but now something weird is happening. The effect is moving the brain. The brain is creating something that is moving the brain, right? And that's where the mystery comes. Where is the brain, is something moving the brain, or is the brain moving something, do you know? Really, I feel the linguistic simulation is a sphere. When you get to the edge of it, your head hits glass, and you're like, no way, no way, the world is made of glass. You know, who knew? And some, you know, sunglass company is gonna be like, you know, I find it that if you look at human psychology, people actually endure through so many moments without emotions rising. You know, it's only because of the novelty factor of communication and the ownership mindset that I would say emotions get out of control and the attention pilots through turbulence. Ultimately, in a world where we have to be explorers, there's no teaching, really. So the invisible cloud is not teaching us anything. We are just creatures that are like, what else is here? You know? And so, what we need to see in the world is the most, literally a merging of the spectrums. So, what it means is like there needs to be a 180-degree shift of, of the perspective of artists and scientists, where artists
are actually in their outer realms trying to be scientists. Hear me out here. And scientists are in their outer realms trying to be artists. That means, could you ever imagine, a science department, a part of a science department in some university where it's as if, in some sense, it's trying to do a scientific experiment poetically, you know? Where it's as if like there's an infusion with the imagination. Now, of course, the scientific method is very limited to our visual senses, you know. But I'm saying that it's just like at the end of the day, whatever we find in this unknown world, we're bringing it back to the tribe, right? And we're the tribe right now, society. If we really denied the imagination, nobody would be able to have another conversation. Literally, it would be repeat action. It is the imagination, it is your inner vision that really actually brings value to the world. You know, I noticed this on in a very unique way where from the emptiness in Buddhism, Buddha says the nature of objective phenomena is empty, right? So it means emptiness is in the middle of the unknown and the fullness of the world. And ahead of the fullness of the world is the infinite, which returns back to the unknown. So we are either the unknown, moving as the known, or we are the known, moving the unknown. These are the two options for the way we are individuals until philosophers begin being like, yo, what if there are collective beings? How would we even know? Yeah. And somebody was like, hey, all these children, all these people on the planet creating art, creating something that hasn't been there before, maybe that's a clue. It's like, we say imagination isn't real, but every product we see was someone's imagination at some point. Every invention was in the inner realms first. So I would say, what is the purpose of that invisible cloud? For now, for the human mind, I would say to be acknowledged. We have to literally be like, yo, it's here. Everything is here and now. Every classification, every way we have made an object into a subject. It's like playing a YouTube like lecture, and let's say you're a break dancer, and wondering how much of the lecture you can listen to while you break. Either we're left to consider everybody knows what they're doing, or nobody knows what they're doing. And really, the species, we're a designer species. Geometry will be like geometry is a language that your mind can only speak in the inner realms, I would say. When I say in the inner realms, that means, you know how you look at a tree and you're like, right now I'm looking at a tree, and sure, it's a tree, one thing, one object that we consider, right? So, but I'm saying, if we are looking at it, it's also just color. Like right now, when I look at the tree, it appears to me as like I could see the whole moment in a 2D way where it's just color, And then in that 2D way, I could just see it's just lines, That means, what is a tree from it's like for the sight, for the eyes, it's just like lines and color, you know. Now this lines and color is in some sense like being recorded like a camera, and somehow this brain camera, you know, they say camera B, I think that B stands for brain. So the brain, like a camera, records it, but somehow can access that recording at any time, right? And it feels it is the one only doing it. So it's either we're treating the brain as just only the brain is here, or we're treating the brain as a glove where the unknown is moving knowledge, where we think the unknown is we know something, then we wonder about the unknown, but it's as if the unknown creates the possibility to know. In Sufi thought, there's this statement that, which is a hadith, but I don't know if it's authenticated. Um, this pretty much this mystical statement was that it's from the viewpoint of God, and in this viewpoint, it's saying that God is saying, I was unknown and I wanted to know myself. I wanted to be known. So I manifested existence to know myself. Right? And it's like that moment where you hear that statement and you're like, oh my God, are we like, you know, therapy for the gods? Who knew the periodic table had so much to say? In a very simple way, the game of life is to use what you have while you have it. And while you use what you have, notice where you're having it. Because for a person who treats themselves as a thought, the 5 questions: why, when, where, what, and how. These are portals for the imagination. It's like we have to really see we're not like an endless battery, you know? So the human being has to abide by the laws of nature, to be in nature, to be able to wonder about nature. Then as it wonders about nature, it's like, am I separate from nature? And when he looks in the mirror, he's like, it looks like it. But on some level, for the mind, nothing has ever been separate. Your mind is not experiencing reality in time. This is why we have to check our watch, you know? So it's very interesting that in our inner realms we are timeless. That means qualia is and you can say it's the poetry of an eternal mind. And outer realm, or let me say it through Immanuel Kant's words, in the outer realms it's phenomenon. In the inner realms, okay, so in the inner realms it's in the outer realms there's time-based phenomena. There's phenomena in time. In our inner realms, there is the word noumenon, the timeless noumenon. So I feel imagination is not happening here. So it can't abide by what is here. This is kind of like the instantaneous overlay of keeping your eyes open and visualizing what I'm seeing like a leaf right now. So I could visualize that leaf like Photoshop copy pasted like 10 times, right? But in reality, there's only one leaf on the ground. But where are those 10 copy pasted? Where was that visual image of the leaf pasted, right? So it's like the brain copies it, but what is pasting? What is pasting? What is pasting? Where is it being pasted?
It's really too early to tell how we will respond to levels of experience collectively that surpass self. But I feel the species is opening it up to it through just our entertainment, through artists trying to draw the other realms, you know. As the poet Rumi says, silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation. Thanks for listening.